Well, again, one of the highlights of Transformation Hawaii or Transform Our World Hawaii is about building a transformational culture and community of Aloha. And our guest this morning is a practitioner of that, been on a powerful and amazing journey, and is gonna took the time out of her busy schedule to join us here this morning. So our guest speaker hails from the beautiful community of Nanakuli, fifth generation of homesteader, a proud graduate of Nanakuli High School, also served in the Lions Club, the Hawaiian Civic Club, neighborhood board, performing arts, huge champion of the performing arts program out there, one of the pride and joy of our community. Also a kahu, a marketplace minister, in one of the darkest areas of our state and country, and that's in government. So she is a state representative from the House District 43. She is, but I really want to introduce her as a stateswoman because we've been praying. One of the things for us is raising up and training up statesmen and women. Stacey's been doing that for years, mentoring people, principals, taking them under her wings. She's a stateswoman from Nanakuli, but more importantly, an ambassador of Aloha from Nanakuli. Would you help me to greet Stacelynn Eli to share her powerful transformation journey? Aloha, Stacey. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning. I hope I live up to that introduction. Thank you so much.
You are, and the valley in the back looks familiar. Is that your community?
Yes, this is my hometown, your hometown, Nanakuli Valley, right behind me. So the beach is from Zubland to Kalanianaole, but I always have that in the back of me. For all the Zooms that I have, I try to keep that.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Stacey. There's so much you can share, but let's start off with something riveting that you shared that I also can resonate, being from Nanakuli, and that's how people look at and treat the people from Nanakuli. And most people don't even realize, if you're not from Nanakuli, they don't even fathom what it's like being from the Black and Gold, being from Nanakuli. Would you share with us how people look at and treat the people from Nanakuli?
For most of my life, when I started to venture out, especially as an adult, into the real world, into the rest of the state, I really got a dose of the stereotype that people have of our hometown, of the whole Waianae coast. And it was really fear. There are stereotypes of just, poor, a lot of crime, unsafe, and just all these different stereotypes. They expected me to be, I guess, very aggressive and confrontational, and that was totally that's totally not my personality or how I try to carry myself ever. And that definitely wasn't the way that I was raised, and not just by my family, but by the rest of my community that I spent my whole life around. Like, that wasn't the environment that I grew up in. It was one that I had shared in my invocation, one full of prayer, full of love, just full of connection. I could not go anywhere in Nanakuli without a kupuna or an adult, not recognizing like who I belong to. It's one of those communities where just by looking at the children, like, who they belong to, like, you don't even have to ask them their last name. But if you do, and they tell you, you know exactly what house they belong to. And that was the upbringing that I have. That was the connection I have to our community. I always felt safe. I never understood when people said, "Oh, it's so, it's dangerous out there." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, like, I feel safe in Nanakuli. I can walk, around in my neighborhood and not have any concern." I feel most unsafe outside of my community, to be honest. because within I know that my neighbors, my family are looking out for me, and I feel the same with my nieces and nephews, but outside of my community is like uncharted territory. Is like I don't know, like I am more fearful outside of my community. In fact, I feel like my community is safe. This is my safe space. Um, and I think that's why I love having it in the background, because in all things that I do, along with God, my hometown is in the back of my mind, um, and my heart, like when I'm doing things, because that's my connection. Um, but yeah, so but that has been my experience with the stereotype. Even when I went to the state capitol, when I got involved in politics, that was that was my experience. Like I've had people like actually tell me to my face, like, "Oh, you speak so well. Oh, you're so nice." Like they're surprised, after I tell them where I'm from, and I'm just like, "Oh, yes, I have a whole community full of people just like me," you know. And so it's a lot of times it's been hurtful. I'll be honest, but I try to be as understanding as I can, and I also recognize my responsibility to make sure that they know that the stereotype that they grew up hearing about my community is false. That is not true. That is not how we are raised. That's not how we love, and we are not that. Um, but yeah, it's been a journey in politics, and trying to navigate, especially being a believer, because with that comes even greater responsibility, greater kuleana. um you know God has really opened doors for myself, and I do my best to make sure that when those doors open, I'm not the only one walking through. It's my community with me. Um, when I first ran for office and till this day, um, one of the things that I pray for the most and I ask God for is to allow me to be a bridge builder. I can honestly say, even when I ran for office, it wasn't about God, please let me win. It was God, please let me be able to build bridges to my community, because I knew what the stereotypes were. I knew the fear, the apprehension, and it wasn't just to my community, but it was even from my community out. In the way that we look at government and the trust that we have, and I'll say that it's warranted. Those that apprehension from my community to government. It's not always been a positive experience for most of my community members, but God has been so good to me. And, in the short time that I've been privileged to serve, I've been able to connect our community with different agencies, different organizations. It's been it's been such an experience. Like sometimes I have to like just step back and just take it in, because it's been powerful. And I think what I love the most is that those who are from outside of our community are really truly able to see, um, the good, the love, um, and just all the great things that I grew up around. They're able to see that and connect with that. And also that there's a building of trust with my community and government, um, which is not an easy thing. um, but I feel like it's been a good experience, for me and for us, and just pastor, the different things that we have worked on together, from our neighborhood security watch to the different food distributions, and just everything that we work on. It's been such a blessing. I know that I can share even with COVID being so divisive in how we respond to each other as as a state, as a country,
Mhm.
I can say that it's it's been a blessing because for me personally, I've seen my community come together. You know,
Mm,
I've seen the powerful things that can happen, you know, when you're not sure about government and what they can do. But, you know, I've seen people who, you know, who probably would not have given me a chance
yeah.
because of the party I belong to, you know, open their hearts and being willing to work with me. And that for that, I am so grateful. And I feel like our community, instead of being the stereotype, I'm proud to say that I think we're being a good example for the rest of the state as far as what can be accomplished when you
Yeah,
work
Stacey,
together.
I wanna jump in because as you're sharing number of things, we see you smiling today, but it hasn't been an easy journey. You said, and something that really pierced my heart. And again, unless you're from our community, you would never know what it's like being from. And you said something about that you're tired of how government treat our community like second class citizens. And that was Stacy's exact words, that she said she's tired of how people treat us like second class citizens. And that's exactly what it's like being
Mhm.
labeled.
Yeah.
Um, and because of that, there's a distrust from the community level. So there's a wide gap. Before me, I got Alice Patterson's book. I'll give it to you later, Stacy, but about bridging the racial and political divide. And God's using you to do that. And a lot of the controversial issues that has been going on would have blew up and really tear apart at the very fabric of what makes Nanakuli special, if Stacy Eli had not been our representative and engage. It's easy to not pick up the phone, not engage in that. And so when it came to Pua Ave, when it came to the landfill issue, when it came to vaccination, unvaccination, she was the one who would call me up and text me like, oh no, it's Stacy again. What's going on now? Because it was polarizing, it was ugly, and the devil tried to tear apart and kill Nanakuli from the inside out. But Stacy was the one that asked the Lord, then asked for help, and and we as a church got involved in that because, like Pancho, if not us, then who? If not now, then when? If not here, then I mean the ugly, the pain, and the hurts, and she adopted it. That's what she volunteered for. That's what she ran for. And I gotta say, I forgot in my introduction, she is the founder, one of the founding members of our awesome dynamic neighborhood security watch. It was that neighborhood security watch that God used Stacy Eli to open areas that I don't think we would have the access, the time of day with the influential leaders from multi-government agencies, a multi-level of government. We would never even have access if she wasn't our state representative reaching out and building bridges. And because of that, there's a connection with the pulpit and the marketplace I would never have access to. But God had used Stacy. So I'm sorry, Stacy, we got to talk about the challenges and the tears, because you got joy now. But I
Yeah.
think everybody needs to understand that God can take our mess and make a message, take our test and make a testimony. So it wasn't easy, right? I mean, what was the one of the most painful things that you had to do? I know there's a lot, but one that you really needed to call out on God, but it was too big. Even as an elected official, you needed a church to get involved. What would be that one thing?
Oh my gosh, there's so many I've had many times.
Well, this is just a sample. They're gonna have to come to the 19th to hear more, but just a small sample.
I think the hardest thing for me, there was many, but one of the things that I think has lasted the longest has been what has gone on one of the streets in my community, our community, Keolana Avenue. I have residents who had been experiencing um, criminal activity at its worst, from game run activity, from trafficking of drugs, of people just terrorizing my community members, my kupuna, and just knowing that it had been 17 years that my community members had documented.
18 years now.
18 years now, documenting the terror that they had experienced. And I'm talking like to the point where this particular area of my community, these are some of the oldest homes, oldest families that have been on the homestead the longest. So majority of the neighbors are kupuna, um, and they've experienced things such as a man having his fingers chopped off and thrown into a lot. You know, they've had guns pulled on their grandchildren. You know, they've just experienced so much, and it's just been a battle, a real spiritual battle, a battle with bringing agencies together to help clean up and also to bring some kind of light to my community members, because even as we work on cases, you know, like with law enforcement, you know, one of the biggest challenges that we had was making them feel comforted and supported enough to come forward and actually testify, just because of how fearful they were of retaliation. I have one kupuna. She lives, you know, she's there during the day by herself. Her grandchildren work. Her children live off island, and we've had conversations. They're like, you know, like we have no problem like testifying, but we're concerned for our tutu. You know, she's home by herself. What is the guarantee that you have that she's going to be safe? And I think the hardest thing for me was telling them that I could not guarantee that. There was just no way that I could. Um, but we needed their testimony, because it was just needed, you know, to move forward the things that we needed to move forward to really help to clean up, you know, this part of our community. And so I've had to ask Pastor Allen and our, not just our church, but our neighborhood security watch, you know, to one, be prayerful, two, be powerful in the moves that we make together, because they needed us to come together. We couldn't just leave them on their own. And you know, like Pastor Allen shared, there's so many things going on in our state, you know, in our community. And it was just making sure that they were 100% supported throughout the whole process. And, you know, we've been blessed, you know, through the organizing of our neighborhood security watch, that it has really opened doors for us to connect to other communities, to other law enforcement agencies. You know, we love our Honolulu Police Department officers. They work really well with us, but you know, we've had to call on other agencies, even federal agencies, to help us. Um, and so I think that has been one of the challenges, and one of the things that I pray for the most is for peace for the residents on Keolana Avenue. This is just one street in my community, and you know, that's not the only home. You know, this one particular home that's been, you know, a problem. You know, the rest of the families that live there, they're wonderful. You know, they're just living in fear of what next, what could happen. And it's one of the things that keeps me up at night, you know, just, you know, trying to work through like you know, what do we do next? What do we do to stay consistent, so that we can help them? And I've been blessed, you know, Pastor Allen has been so great, you know, along with our other NSW captains in really taking lead.
Yeah,
And
if I may jump in, Stacy, guys, I gotta confess, if it wasn't for Stacy, I will be doing church. I will be doing church, the church thing. So much on my plate, so many things to do. But when she called and you heard her love for her community, And our kupunas and that street used to be so safe, and you hear their cries, and the government system is overwhelmed, and 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 what was written for Hawaiian homes 100 years ago no longer works today, and the criminals know that. And God used Stacy to reach out and to really ask that we get involved. And not only that, but she used her influence to open doors that only God could, to bring multi agencies together at the table to all come and find productive, positive, solution-oriented pathways. And what you see is the expression, just an expression of the ecclesia to bring healing to our community. And even with the vaccinated, unvaccinated, she called me for help on that one too. I'm like, what? And I said, Pastor, there's so much issues, and God used again our representative to get the ecclesia involved, to bring the community together as one, and make covenant that we're going to spread aloha, not corona, no matter where you stay. So, but one of her greatest legacies, I believe, will be the ecclesia NSW. And it's the shifting in a radical, miraculous way. We cannot share too much details because of where it's at this point in time. But I hope and pray by the 19th it will be done. We can go official on record to share, or if not, guarantee by the global summit. You will see the greatest miracle in the state of Hawaii. I had unofficial reports off record of this platform of the Ecclesia NSW has the power and potential to mobilize people to transform an entire state. And it started with this stateswoman, ambassador of Aloha, Kahu now, of House District 43. Oh, and by the way, Representative Eli, a government official. But that's the power of this Friday morning meetings. This is the power and the fruit of transform our world, Hawaii. Whether you're in Chinatown, like Pastor Jocelyn, out there in Hawaii, Kai, like, it doesn't matter. We one family. And we serve one Father. And because of that, as we come, that's the miracle. So we share in the struggles, the pain. You guys prayed for Puab. You guys prayed for Stacy without even knowing that she was involved in that. So let us share and celebrate together as a family what God is doing. So sorry, Stacy, I just had to throw that in there, that God used you to open all these doors, and now we're connected. Like, why they like me for? And by the way, they driving to that church. What's the name of the church you go to? What's the name of your church? Oh yeah. You got agents. You got government agents coming to Nanakuli, Nana Ikapono, to look to the source for healing in our government system that they know does not work. So right there. So I just had to share that, Stace, because yeah. So, but anyway, we got maybe about like 10 minutes or so, but anything else you wanted to share as we gather here?
Just that if there is anything that I can share today about, even my job, my position as a state representative, and what I can share with all of you folks is, is to lead, lead with light, to stay prayerful, and keep God at the forefront of all the things that you do. I come across so many different types of people from all walks of life, and not all of them are believers, but it is our kuleana as believers to make sure that we are spreading that message of God and how great He is. And it's not always going to be easy. Sometimes they're not going to be as receptive. You may come across those that have nothing nice to say about it, but that's okay. you keep moving forward, and you keep being the example. We've talked about creating a culture of honor, a culture of aloha, and the kuleana that we have as believers to really, spread that culture. In my line of work, it's not easy. I have been yelled at, I have been cussed at, I have been called names, and it hurts. It hurts a lot, but I always make sure that I watch my tongue when I respond. I watch my words and my intentions and my heart. And, you know, it's because of God, that I feel like I have control over it. I know Pastor Allen was so kind to share my invocation with all of you folks. I can share with you that in the crowd of my colleagues, not all are believers, but even though many are, but for those that are not, they still bow their head in prayer with me. For one particular colleague who is not a believer, this person was in tears after our pule together, and even came up to me and said that was so powerful. And this person doesn't believe, you know. And I had other colleagues who noticed that and said, "Do you think that person, could convert? Could we get them to come over?" I said, "With God, all things are possible. You know, any God can do anything, and it's up to us to carry, that kuleana with care." I remind myself all the time, it's not about Stace and what I want, it's about what God wants. And I remind myself that all the time, and it's not easy, but it's totally worth the effort. It's totally worth the time. Um, I don't have the luxury of sitting in front of people or working with people that's always gonna think the same way that I do and believe the same that I do. And I thank God for that, because it gives opportunity for us to find solutions and for me to be an example. Um, I was just on a meeting with Pastor Allen the other week, and the exchange wasn't so nice, and I held it together best that I could, and I allowed other people to say what they had to say. They were frustrated with government, they were angry, and when we got off the line, I had other believers text me and tell me, don't worry, girl, we love you. We know the work that you do. And, by the time Pastor Allen called me, I was in tears because I'm human, it hurts. And so I just encourage you all to know the power that you also have over others, and what you say and how you conduct yourself, it affects everything around you. But I think that's what I wanted to share the most, because it's made a difference in my kuleana and the work that I do. I don't know how long God is gonna allow me to serve, I don't know what path he's gonna put me on and take me down, but I believe with my whole heart, and I know that whatever he has planned for me, it's for the, it's good. It's it's gonna be amazing, because it has been. I also want to share that when I first ran for office, I didn't win. The second time for office, I didn't win. And I share with other colleagues or other, potential candidates that you're not going to always be successful in certain things, but there are lessons in defeat. There's lessons in failure, and I feel like I needed those lessons, because when I finally had the privilege to serve in government, to serve my community, to serve this state, I was better equipped. I was better prepared. And it just reminded me, when you're in your calling, sometimes there's uncertainty, because there's a lot of pain that can come with that. there's been a lot of self-doubt. I don't have a college degree. You know, I've been in school. I'm still trying to finish. I'm not an attorney. I don't have, you know, the best resume. So there was a lot of self-doubt in, did I belong? Did I belong in that building with everyone else? And I was reminded by Kupuna, you know, that God doesn't call on the qualified, He qualifies the called. And, you know, that's definitely has been my experience. Because every time I fell short, it's been a lesson on how to do things better. And I've been so blessed to have powerful prayer warriors around me, powerful believers who I get to talk to and who mentor me and who have really contributed to the leader that I am and I hope to be. So I just try to, you know, share that with others, and I hope that it's helpful and it's encouraging. Um, in the world that we live in, it's so easy to jump on social media and to be reckless, you know, in the things that you say, not just to government officials, to anyone. It could be your family member, it could be your neighbor. But I just caution, you know, people when they do that because you're being hurtful, you know, and if you're being cruel, it's okay to express how you feel. That's not the issue, but just be cautious with your intention and, you know, what your end goal is. Is your goal when you post these things to hurt the other person, or are you trying to contribute to the eventual solutions that we're trying to get to? And the last plug I wanted to make was to get involved, you know, to do the work, you know, to do more. You know, I I love going to church. It's my safe space. You know, I feel like I can just be me. It's just me and God. Um, but I recognize you should feel like that no matter where you go. Whether you're in the church, outside the church, it should always be you and God in all things that you do. Um, but put hands in your community. There are so many organizations that need your help. One of the lessons that I learned is for all the stereotypes that people have about my coast, when COVID hit, it was my community. They were asking, how do we put together a food distribution? How do we organize community events? Because we had done it for so long, I can tell you that I had people coming from Hawaii Kai, from Mililani, all the way to Nanakuli to get food, you know, and I had employees from different companies reaching out to me, asking me, how do we put together a food distribution? And I would ask them, have you reached out to your local churches? Have you asked for help? You know, we can help you. We want to help you. But are you willing to also help your community while you're doing it? So that was the biggest takeaway that I had, was that my community was able to be an example. And the other lesson that I learned during COVID was when the lockdowns happened, when everyone was afraid, a lot of our food distributions, we used to have every week, we had a food distribution going on. But what I didn't realize until COVID happened was that all of the volunteers were kupuna. They were all of our kupuna. And so when COVID happened, guess what happened? We lost volunteers. You know, they were inside, they were protecting themselves, their families wanted them protected. And many of our food distributions had to shut down. But it was because we didn't have enough hands. You know, we didn't have enough volunteers. And so our most vulnerable, I learned, were the ones taking care of us all these years. You know, they raised us, they nurtured us, they taught us to pray, they taught us about God. And even in the times that they were supposed to be enjoying, you know, all of their work and the fruits of their labor, they were giving back. So I just wanted to share that with you, to impress upon you how important it is to get involved with your community. But yeah, sorry, I don't want to take up too much time, Pastor Allen, but I wanted to
Amen.
share that.
No, amen. Thanks for sharing, Stacy. But you know, a word for all of us: just because we failed, it doesn't mean that we are a failure. And God can take our scars and turn them into stars, because that's just what He does. So, with that said, thanks for joining us, Stacy.